Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this 24th session of the SAM Best Practice webinar. My name is Nicolas Rousseau. I'm a product manager for Flexera, ITAM, and we will spend an hour together in this recorded session to go through a number of topics like every month. First topic will be to get some news, and then we will focus today on the coming features for the October release, which cover the Publisher Hub and the Intelligent Allocation and Exemption that will bring additional value to the software asset management functionalities of ITAM, and then FlexNet Manager as a second step in the next on-prem release. So I'm going to share my screen and share my screen, the entire screen. And let's move on. I will mix, PowerPoints and demos, and probably more demos than PowerPoint this month. Let's move on to check the first slide, which is about the previous sessions. I will not go through each of the first sessions that were delivered, the first 23 sessions that got delivered, but keep in mind that if you go to the SAM Best Practice Hub, I will open this link a little bit later, you will find the full list with the recordings. And I will, for instance, talk about the last session, which was on the streamed applications, managing streamed applications with ITAM, with FlexNet Manager. Each session has the recording, the full agenda, and the PowerPoint that got used in a PDF format. So this session that you are currently attending will also be joining this list, and will also get an announcement for the availability of the recording. So as you see, topics are very, there is a great variety of topics from very technical topics or quite technical on metering, for instance, but also some very licensing ones, such as Windows Server Optimization, managing Java, that got recently refreshed in May. So you have a number of topics that may or not be relevant to your role, but I hope that these sessions can help you. The agenda is pretty simple this month. We will start with the last session's pointers and the answers to questions. We will then have a look to the news. Not so many news, but the biggest one being the 2023 1.4 version, which is coming in October. And I will spend most of the time describing two of the big features that represent a step forward in terms of value for using the Flexera SAM management tools. So if we start with the last session, was on the management of streamed applications, such as Citrix, Horizon, or Microsoft AppV. The recording and PowerPoint are in this in the community. So if I open the link to that, you will see that in the community there is a section which is called Events and Webinars, that you can access directly when you arrive on the community. You arrive on the Community Hub, and then this Events and Webinar contains the last session announcements with the recording, the detailed agenda, links eventually to additional resources, and also the presentation that was used during the presentation during the webinar. So don't hesitate to register to the events and webinar section. Just to show you the navigation, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. So when you join the community.flexera.com, which is the root of the site, you have this community hub, and going to the events and webinars, you will see all the announcements for each of the sessions the past and the future ones. And if you want to get a warning and or an email notification, please subscribe to this page, and you will get the next events in your email in your mailbox. Okay, so let's move on back to the PowerPoint. The topic was a little bit technical on the data collection for Citrix virtual desktops, so VDIs, so the question was, do we need to inventory each template? That means indeed that we need the agent on each of the VDI template. Just as a reminder, a VDI template is a set of applications and an operating system that will be instantiated in a VDI, in a virtual desktop. If the virtual desktop is non-persistent, it will not remember what you did, so it will reset every time you reconnect to the VDI. And of course, if you don't inventory all templates, you will be missing the installed applications. And if you don't have the applications, you will not be able to have the signatures of the application passed to the user's computers, which is the principle on how we manage VDI remote access or remote streaming. So just to summarize, the VDI inventory, once you have these templates inventoried correctly and with the list of applications, the VDI inventory, which is on the Citrix broker service, will collect all the VDIs and will connect the VDIs to the templates. Second question, which was a little bit a concern, if you install the agent, another person who had nearly the same question, or if you install the agent on the VDI template, won't all of the non-persistent VDI clones created from that template have an agent? And each will create an inventory device record. So to be honest, I had maybe slightly misunderstood the meaning of the question, but so the template will be inventoried, and the non-persistent VDIs will not have time anyway to be inventoried. So there is no reason the full record would be created. The non-persistent VDIs are created when we import the inventory data, but they are not created as VDI computer or as inventory devices, which would consume Flexera item licenses or Flexera Manager licenses. So normally there is no side effect of inventorying the VDI template on the non-persistent VDIs. Let's move to the next step, which is about the news. So item 2023 1.3, so the cloud version of Flexera SAM in Flexera 1, will be released on September 13th. It contains bug fixes and AD group reporting objects. A new object that I will introduce because it's quite important in the light of the next feature, which is the intelligent allocation and exemption. So just to go back to the Internet Explorer, so Google Chrome, if you go to docs.flexera.com, always showing the same, but it's good you have that in mind. If you pick up Flexera 1 in the list of products, if you go in the IT asset management features by release, you will see month by month all of the features that got released. And if we check the September 1, for instance, you see that there were some small changes, additional currency supported, some bug fixes, but the new Active Directory group reporting object was added in this version, and that's it. That was not so much. The next one will contain more, and that's the purpose of this code. Okay. So going back to this presentation, the best practice hub that I will show a little bit, not spend too much time on it, but the best practice hub contains all the links to the previous session, but also contains pointers to solutions. which have been published as a knowledge-based article or article in the community, and 2 new solutions on importing Citrix license consumption data or Microsoft RDS cards. So this is related to the last topic, which was how do we manage streamed applications, but the extension is how do we manage the streaming technologies license needs. And both Citrix and Microsoft RDS are very specific because they have some license servers, or they have some Citrix as a console, which is monitoring the concurrent usage. So the idea of these 2 solutions is to import and connect to these sources of information to import who uses what license, for instance, what type of CAL for Microsoft, or what license got which consumption on which server from the Citrix console, and then allocate these consumption to the relevant licenses. So just opening the Best Practice Hub. If you have attended the 23 sessions or 24, you have seen it 24 times, but it's an important article that aggregates a lot of information and talks about the hubs particularly. So we are talking here about the last hub that we are delivering. There would be more probably in the future, but this is the plan we had when I started this document. And you see here in the some best practice webinar list, you see what I was showing you in a slide, which is the link to each of the different recordings and agendas, detailed agenda. So if you go down, this document shows a lot on what we have done, what are eventually the on-premise solutions that existed before this became features. So if you are in a version of FlexNet Manager, which is not including these enhancements, you can already at least create the reports that will provide you better visibility and so on. So the hubs are described. This is a SAM operations hub here. Each of the report is described a little bit. And then you get the SAM publisher hub. This is the one we're going to demo today. And finally, if you go down, you will see the SAM optimization hub that got released back in December of 2022. And going at the very bottom of this article, which is showing, again, a lot of explanations on what the optimization report do and how they work and so on, you can, for this one, you can, at the very end, find additional solutions, which are described here. So, for instance, how to create an advanced automation for a cloud in ITAM without access to the local SQL database. You have a number of examples of using the latest REST APIs, which have been made available on the cloud version of ITAM. License duplication wizard. This is just for on-premise users. Nutanix and RHEV, and finally, on the bottom, you have these 2 solutions that got shared. For instance, how to import Microsoft RDS cards. Here you have a very detailed document that will explain how to collect the data and all of the code related to this solution is actually in the Word document, which is at the very bottom of this. So you have this document that contains actually the true zip file embedded. This is a screenshot, this one, and you get the PowerShell script and all the explanations, etc., etc., and the Excel and the XML file for the Business Adapter Studio. So keep an eye on this, or take a look to this SAM Best Practice Hub. There are probably things which could be of use for you. Okay, and finally, the Flexera August ITAM newsletter. So I have actually, I have an HTML version of it, which is here. So this newsletter will contain, a little bit redundant with what we're saying, but will contain announcements of the coming sessions, eventual links to new knowledge-based articles, and also additional information, Lisa for Flexera, which is, for instance, exclusive training that you can get, and best practices, Flexera ideas, how to submit ideas, or sometimes a little article on the Windows Server licensing change, for instance. There are things that have changed. So if you don't have this newsletter coming to you, don't hesitate to ask a question in this in the chat, and you will get and provide your email address, and we will add you to this list of addresses for this newsletter. This is an email. Moving on. Let's start with the next topic, the next big topic, which is a deep dive into this SAM Publisher Hub that we will get in October. The SAM Publisher Hub is, so first, let's start with the beginning. Why the SAM Publisher Hub? ITAM had an object-centric view of the world, which is useful. Many people are very interested in understanding their purchase across publishers or across vendors, their contract, their licenses, and so on. But one thing we were missing was an application publisher-centric view of the data. So typically, when you import purchase into FlexNet or into ITAM, you will have a publisher that is actually technically a vendor, because it is not normalized. You can name it, Microsoft Incorporated, and the next time Microsoft US or Microsoft France, and these records will be loaded in the all purchase screen, for instance, or tables. And one downside of managing imports with Excel imports, or managing contracts with declaring the vendor of your contract, is that it may be complicated to get a per application publisher view of the compliance. So there were 2 steps or 3 steps actually in this SAM Publisher Hub before showing a nice visualization of everything about a publisher, and I'm sure there will be more, but this is a starting point. We needed to connect the vendors which are related to licenses, which are related to purchase, to the application publishers. So there is you will see we have a new screen which is sort of summarizing the data per application publisher, and then we have the dashboard, which is coming in October. So this screen is already released. I will show it on a true production system, and the dashboard will be on the beta system, which has 1 or 2 issues still, but I will be able to do the demo. Our systems will be able to answer the simple but very complex to address question, which is, what are the publishers, or is this publisher mattering to me? So this is a slide that we have in our roadmap, and this just wanted to position the 2 steps. I will start with the vendor to publisher normalization and the new application publisher screen that got released back in July, I think. And the next one, which is the SAM Publisher Hub that I will demo today. And again, many details on the SAM Best Practice Hub, which is our blog, which is containing a lot of information. Keep moving on before showing the screen itself. The screens and the vendor normalization, I will show it more than maybe explain it. So let's connect immediately to a cloud version of ITAM. Of course, I've been delogged, so I have to relog. Okay. Okay, so let's connect to a demo system, Flexera 1, which has it's a pretty good data. And I will open this application publisher new screen, So for on-prem customers, I will show where it is, but and it will come later. It will come in November with the new on-prem versions, November, December. For the cloud customers, you go to Application and Evidence, and on top of all the application screens, you have this Application Publisher screen. And just if you go to if you're on-prem, it will be in the on top of the application screens under the application load. So let's open this screen on a demo system just to see what it looks like. I already demoed that 2 months ago, but I will quickly show it before I'm showing the next step, which is the visualization and the dashboard. So if I open this application publisher screen, you see that we have a mix of information which was never mixed in ITAM. There was not even a publisher screen. So you could see, from a list of applications installed, which is the publisher, which is nice, from the application recognition library. So this is a very normalized information. But you didn't have the connection to the business data. For instance, how much do I spend on Oracle as a publisher was a topic which was a little bit complex to address, or do I have a lot of commercial installations? Do I have any installation which is on containers, for instance? How many licenses do I have for this application publisher? How many contracts? Or how many process purchase? All of this was actually disconnected because you had on one side the inventory view. You have Oracle database, enterprise, and advanced compression option on this and this servers. But then you had another thing, which was the Oracle license, which was linked to eventually Oracle US purchase. And everything was not aggregated up to the publisher level. So if I open this record, you will see that so the general tab is not very impressive. It doesn't say a lot, but you have then, what you had in the object-centric screens. So the install application screen that would show across publishers all the installed application here will be focused on Oracle, and you will even be able to do most of the processes from the screen, such as, creating a license, for instance, from the context of this Active Data Guard application, which is actually, so I'm not sure if it's licensed or not. I would add the is licensed, just to be sure. Okay, so sorry, it's on screen. It's not licensed, so here it would be typically relevant to create a license, clicking on this button. So we have sort of a aggregation of the data from the application publisher context. And this one is nothing extraordinary. Oracle was already the application publisher. You have then, the licenses that got created, which are related to Oracle as a publisher. And you will see that we're not just trusting, this publisher column, which is actually pure text. So we're not doing a string matching. We're using a calculated link that you can eventually override. So what are the licenses for this publisher? What is your compliance? Eventually, you have another report which gives you the analysis of the licenses, if they have issues with upgrade, downgrade rights, and so on. And then, you have this contract tab that will show the contracts recorded against this publisher, the purchase. So we had a small, okay, so there is no purchase. Yes, we had a small bug which was purchased, were not filtered. It's normally fixed in the coming version. And then vendors. And here, here's the link. So here, it's not very spectacular, but we could have Oracle Incorporated, Oracle US, and Oracle France that eventually got linked to purchase. Here, the vendor is actually linked to the publisher in a calculated way and in a overridden way. But before I'm opening this, I will finish the other tabs. The spend tab is interesting. It shows a month per month, or sorry, 5 years global spending with a trend. And it will show a quarter by quarter over 3 years, quarter by quarter spending by contract. And you will see the SAM Publisher Hub will take this data, of course, and we show it. So the idea that we get a quick view on the total spending for a publisher from the publisher screen first, but also from the spend tab that will show the summarized purchase. So this is all about the purchase cost related to the vendor. And if we move on, we have the three tabs which are about processes, the unlicensed installations, the unrecognized inside evidence. So here, these are about gaps and the unprocessed purchase. And just a remark, here, the unrecognized inside evidence, because they're not yet linked to a normalized publisher. So here we let you, filter based on your brain. And here there is a good chance that you get the one that didn't get recognized, and eventually you can you can process assign to applications, for instance, these unrecognized applications. So I was talking about each process can be performed from this new publisher tabs. One process cannot be done, which is processing purchases. This is a quite complicated process. So here, you will need to go to the unprocessed purchase screen, which is pointed here, if you want to process purchase, but you will need to filter again on Oracle. Okay, so hopefully all of these make sense. We now have a view which puts the publisher in the center of the universe, SAM universe. And the next step, if I go back to the PowerPoint, next step is to, forget it. Okay. So next step is to provide a visualization on this data, which will be, of course, adapted to everybody's profile. So I'm going to, and what I did not insist on, if you go back to the application publisher, if you go back to this screen, everybody will see in this screen what is authorized to see. Let's say, I'm just an Italian employee and I can see a tenth of the total portfolio that my worldwide company has in the world. This user will see the sum of purchase related to what he can see in his profile. So if he has an access restriction from its user profile, all this data will be reduced and summarized, or sliced based on the user access right. Just wanted to insist on that. And then, I'm going to show you this SAM Publisher Hub, which is, so if you're a cloud customer, let's start with that because you will see it first. If you're a cloud customer, you can go to Dashboard and you see here, the SAM Optimization Hub, the SAM Operations Hub that got released in April, and there will be a third one, which is the SAM Publisher Hub. And once you open the SAM Publisher Hub, you get an empty page until you select a publisher. Okay, just hope my VPN access will not be an issue. So let's refresh. And you need to pick up a publisher. So picking up a publisher is it's not very complex, but interestingly, what you see is that the data that you have to select the publisher will be the same as the SAM publisher screen. So you get a feeling on who are the big ones before you say, okay, so here, I don't have so much spend data, but let's say, Microsoft is an interesting one. And then, just by closing that, you get the Microsoft. Actually, I wanted to start with Oracle. So let's say, you have, go back to the SAM Publisher Hub. I'm typing Oracle. Okay. Searching Oracle, selecting Oracle. And then, this Oracle data will be uploaded. So I have a small issue that some data is not cleaned up. So let's focus on what makes sense for Oracle. you see here a view on the top 20 commercial products based on the number of installations. And you will get, the names like that. And again, that was a question we had, should we display all the labels or just display when there is more than, let's say, 10%? This is a choice we have done. We may show a little bit more. And you can also get, the view on the evolution of these top 20 products with the trends. This is all about, understanding and that's the logic of the full hub. I will go back to. Actually, I wanted to show this, which is, one of the widgets of the SAM optimization hub. The SAM optimization hub shows you a potential optimization by vendor. So you will have one bar for Oracle, one bar for Microsoft, one bar for each of the vendors where we have either the named user optimization report, the report that monitors all your subscriptions and that checks, if people have an active subscription but no installed application or no used application. Or for Oracle, it's quite specific. I think the drill down doesn't work yet, so I will not click on it. But for Oracle, it's a report which is actually catching. I'm going to open the SAM optimization hub. There we go. And if you click on Oracle, it opens a report, which is called Optimum Virtualized Architecture for Oracle Options. Don't think I have a lot of data here, a little bit. So this report is quite powerful. It will show you the full list of your VMs, which are on clusters. This is the big topic of optimizing license consumption on Oracle, on VMware clusters. It will show which are the clusters, which are the deployed options for these options. And we don't have here, too much data, but we could have, Oracle Enterprise Database and Oracle Enterprise Database, Oracle Advanced Compression. So we regroup, basically, we determine which are the installed and used options with Oracle Database Enterprise. And the report will compute the optimal architecture. So what are the VMs that you should regroup together in smaller clusters, which are specialized by option, group of options, I would say. And then, the report computes the delta between your current architecture. So here it's a quite simple one. I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 1, 2, 3 clusters, which total, 116 cores. This is quite big. And if I check, the sum of the cores of the VMs, which are across these clusters, the topic is, you should have a smaller cluster, 40 cores, where you would put all of these VMs, which are absolutely consistent. Here, I just have one cluster, which is recommended. And you would save between this current architecture and the target one, you would save 1.6 million. So it's a very, very interesting report to check. I go back to the SAM Operations Hub, to the SAM Publisher Hub, but have a look to this one. This potential optimization is interesting. I'm going to run now Microsoft. Okay. So we have more data for Microsoft, but not for the optimization. That's why I wanted to start with Oracle. So Microsoft, you have this top 5 over compliance or top 5 under compliance. So you have 5 licenses. And the amount we show is either the total cost for compliance, which is nothing less than the exceed, so over compliance, excess of rights that the license shows, multiplied by the price per right of the license, which is calculated based on the chargeback price, or if there is none, the overridden price, or if there is none, the latest cost of the latest purchase of a license, of a software type purchase. And you get, the snapshot of the top 5. If you have not managed the price information or the cost information of your license, we took a decision, which was we will consider $1, which doesn't mean anything, but $1 per right, so that at least you see, which are the most over or under compliant in points, if you don't have set any cost data, or in cost as soon as you will fix the issue. So here, again, it's not working, but if I click yes, I get an error. There will be, drill down into the Microsoft publisher record on the license tab, for instance. It won't be filtered on the over compliant license, but you can find it quickly. So here you get, both the snapshot, as usual, with this hub, and the trend over 1 year. And the trend for the 5 licenses that you see in the snapshot, so the 5 most over compliant license, and you will see how things evolved. And this data is reading into the data warehouse. So one thing I would like to say that if you have a restricted access, you will see some of the widgets because this data is sliced for the user restriction. But for instance, the historical data will not be sliced by entities, so we cannot, show you the trend because the data in the data warehouse is not stored, with all the slicing based on the enterprise groups. So keep in mind, if you run this SAM Publisher Hub, everybody has access to it, or people who have access to SAM to license information. But once you access to this SAM Publisher Hub, you will get the slice view if you have a restricted access, but you may not see anything if you have a restricted access on some of the widgets. And that's a constraint, to be totally transparent. The initial project and plan was to provide this. I don't have it here. Some operations. So the initial plan was to have this enterprise filter where you could slice the data. Let's say I'm an admin, but I want to see, so I don't have a lot of data on this one, but I want to see only for a specific entity. But unfortunately, given the fact that the data is not always sliced in the way it's stored, it didn't make sense to have this enterprise filter. So the first version would not contain it, and it would mean changing a little bit the way we historize the data to make this enterprise filter available on the SAM Publisher Hub. So I'm going down the list: over compliance, under compliance, same topic. Optimization by taking action. Here, if in my demo database I had some, let's say, Office E5 licenses, named user license, if I had users with no installation of Office or no use of one of the applications, there would be data, and I would see 1 column per product. So it's the data is sliced by product or shown by product. And here, the insert product with the top 20 and the breakdown. That doesn't work at this stage. Okay, so there will be more. There will be 2 more dimensions that will be displayed. So the upcoming contracts that will come in the next quarter, so by the end of December. So the contract renewal with 2 dimensions, one which is the date of renewal. So we will have, I think it's 3 years forward with 6 months between each date. But also we will see, if the important has if the contract has a massive purchase attached to it. So it's sort of is it a big contract? And the size of the bubble will be corresponding to the sum of purchase that we know at this stage, or the total value of the contract that some people use to manage a sort of a contract weight, financial weight. And finally, the bottom of this hub will show some financial data. What is my total spend by quarter and by contract, which is exactly what you saw in the publisher detail in the spends tab. and the spend trend will be displayed. So we'll see, but it will be by you will see the cost and added cost over the time, so that you see if we're accelerating or not the investment on some of the contracts for the publisher. So a spend trend will finalize this Sun Publisher Hub. And yes, we don't have this enterprise filter. It won't be part of the feature. Okay, so this is it for the Sun Publisher Hub. I think I've covered it carefully, and let's move on to the last topic of today that I will cover in 20 minutes or 19 minutes, which is the intelligent allocation and exemptions. So to take a step back, maybe, I'm going to describe very quickly another feature which was very similar, which was called intelligent license restriction. This feature got introduced for 2022 R2. So if you have a current on-premise version, you may have this feature and not know it. The idea that instead of restricting a license, which is a way of focusing the license on the scope, you don't want to cover any server which is in APAC. If you have, let's say, a restricted contract which is just covering North America, so you can treat a license which would be scoped, and that was the case for a long time, on a specific entity or a specific location. Or you could even, have multiple ones. The restriction was actually taking the intersection of all of the records. That was good, but there are many cases where we would have loved to do more subtle things with the restriction, because restricting a license, in a way, is a way of influencing it. If, let's say, a license for IBM infrastructure data stage for non-production covers only non-production servers, there will be a new feature that will also bring something on that. But if you have a non-production license, you have that's a pity that you need to allocate the servers and eventually allocate the servers the next day after they started to consume from the, let's say, production license. So the slicing or the restriction of the license using more complicated filtering was really a big need, and brings a big value to customers. And this feature is relevant for production and production, for server desktop. This is what Java had at least up to January. Specific contracts, in this contract, I'm covering both SQL Server and Windows Server. I am an MSP, managed services provider. But for this other contract, anything installed outside of Windows Server is the customer's liability. So here you can tell to the licenses, for instance, I am a SQL Server customer liable license. This license will be focused on all of the VMs which are linked to a contract which is including or which is not including SQL Server, for instance. So that's how you can make and understand and slice the consumption between the MSP and his customers. High or low density, that's another big use case for a Windows Server for Red Hat. Some clusters are massively loaded with, let's say, Windows Server VMs or Red Hat Enterprise Linux VMs. This one would make sense to be covered with the Data Center Edition or Data Center Node for Red Hat. Some lower density clusters would be worth being licensed with Windows Server, for instance, Standard Edition. Or defined populations of servers, NUP and processor servers. So processor would any option or the database need to be licensed consistently, and that's what you can enforce with knowing a population of servers that you will focus your licenses on. All my NUP licenses will focus on this list of 10 servers that I know to be accessed only for test purpose or for a limited number of users. This is my population. I create a report that contains these 10 servers or these 20 servers, and I use this report to make a sort of a focused license that will not try to cover anything else. So it looks quite simple. I will show that in the UI. The allocation and exemption is using exactly the same logic, which is we are going to define a target not based on a static list of allocated devices that a human being has done, but on a dynamic list of that will be reflected by a report. So this is quite simple in terms of UI, I would say, but this is very powerful once you know exactly what you want to do. So you need to put thoughts on how you want to manage these restrictions or allocations or exemptions. But once you know what you want to do, you don't need any longer to have a business adapter studio import that will allocate servers to licenses. So this is self-managed, I would say, once you have the logic encapsulated in a report. Let's move on. And intelligent allocation and exemption is the same type of logic. And I will also show a new reporting object, which is called, AD group. So allocation and exemptions are useful for license optimizations. You don't want to consume or you want to further consumption on this specific server. And there is a full session on the license allocation and exemption. So if you want, have a look to the some best practice webinar. Okay, some best practice webinar, which is probably here. So in the item best practice, there was a full session back in back in February, using allocations and exemptions for an optimal license consumption. So here, you will get all the details on what is an allocation, what is an exemption, what it means. I will be fast on that. But now you can use this optimization logic and use to define the population of users or device. You will be able to use a report or even a report which is reading an edit. That is very, very important. So, and let's go for the demo. So, I think this one. So if I go to all licenses, and here, no way to demo on the cloud version because this is still sort of a beta version. Okay, so let's let the virtual machine wake up a little bit. So something that was possible for years, if I take, let's say, SQL Server 16. So these are Doomy licenses, Doomy computers, everything is Doomy, but the feature is here. So if I open this license, something that has been possible for a long time was to say, okay, how much am I consuming on this Microsoft Server Core license on this SQL Server 2016? And an interesting thing was to say, for instance, there is this device. I know that this is a standard edition, an enterprise edition, sorry. This is in a host which has a number of enterprise edition and standard edition VMs, or this cluster has a big mix of both. So I want to actually force the fact that SQL Server will be consumed by this virtual machine. So here you have to be very careful because if you mix, you may have a side effect that your host is consuming. There could be a risk, that you don't consume correctly because you have allocations which could be conflicting. But the story is this one, by allocating, let's say, permanently, or so the permanent will always consume, and allocated will need the application to be installed to consume. You will influence the reconciliation script, and this license will cover in priority this VM. So this is something not new. And exemption, this is an allocation where you actually put a reason, and this allocation will in priority cover, the license will cover in priority this device, but will actually consume 0, which means that the installed application, SQL Server 2016 Enterprise on this machine, will not be consuming from another license, so it will sort of be not consuming. Here, a typical example with Microsoft is, I know that this is a test system, we checked. This is a system that users are, accessing, but all of these users are have an MSDN active subscription, so I will exempt this server from consuming. So these are the two big things, and you can actually apply allocations and exemptions from multiple places. So if you open this use rights and rules, there is a section where you can define the exemption by device role, which is a sort of a first automated exemption. You can add or remove allocations and exemption with a business adapter studio. So that's part of the demo of the February some best practice webinar. Or you can finally, there is a last thing, which is you can allocate. So from this license compliance and apply allocation and exemption, there is a screen which is quite clever, which is filtering on the license consumption and the install applications. And then here you can, let's say, allocate. With something new that came with in January for cloud customers, an allocation reason. You can document why you allocated, and you can do these allocations from the screen. So if I step back, I go back to my license. That's nice. I have a way of allocating or exempting. I have a manual way of doing that, which is by using either the screen I showed or using the consumption tab. And I have a semi-automated way or an automated way, which is quite simple, which is for the exemption only to use these rules. The new features, which are quite fast to present, are that now you don't need to use or to do manually things or with a business adapter. You can actually define a target. So a typical target for I don't know, allocating servers or users. I will show a user license where it makes even more sense. But you can actually, maybe it makes more sense here for the exemption. Here you could say, I will exempt all of the servers which are non-production and which are in the, let's say, US data center, because I know that, people in France don't have MSDN, while people in the US are all covered by MSDN. So I trust the fact that, I don't trust the fact that the exemption by rule would be good, but I trust the fact that the exemption by report, and this report is focusing on the servers which are of the right target, I will exempt by server, by this report. And here, when I click enter, I see a list of reports. So again, very limited data. But once you add the report, the next step will be that the report will compute at the time you run the reconciliation, so once a day typically, and the exemption by report or the allocation by report will be automatically created, knowing that there is a little bit tricky management of things. We consider that somebody who created manually an allocation or an exemption will keep his work, because the report, could one day allocate a server or exempt a server, the next day no longer allocate it or no longer exempt it, and eventually we will move to a new report or remove the report. So there was a big part of the logic was to say, what do we do if there is a conflict? The report returns a server. The server is for an exemption. Somebody had allocated the server, which would have consumed. What do we do? What we have decided is that the exemption always wins on the allocation, but the manual work will be kept, which means that the next reconciliation, if my server is no longer exempted by report, the allocation, including the manual allocation reason that somebody set up, will come back. So that's what the documentation will define in details. But in the end, you have an automation that ensures that you can use a target report for allocations and exemptions with automation. One area where it's very interesting is if you go to all licenses. I don't have the right example, but we could imagine I have a CBEL license, Oracle CBEL, and then this license in the allocation and exemption. So this is a named user license. In the allocation exemption here, this license will be focused on the population of users based on their AD group. There is no way we know which user has which CBEL access from the inventory data we have. But if we create a new report, and that's when the Active Directory groups are used as application assignments, which is something massively done for Citrix, for instance. But that could be also, named user applications, which are using this allocation. So here, you can create. So the reports we see will always be from the. So if you're on the license type, which is named user, the report you can use, of course, is a user starting point. So you pick up the user, and then you have this new AD groups link, which is a 1N link. So let's say here, I'm going to the next step, and I could create. I'm sure it would not work, but if I said CBEL, I'm pretty confident there is nothing on CBEL, but I think I saw some Citrix, not sure why. So you can have users linked to AD groups that correspond to named user application. And here, the idea is to set the report, make it public. You name it CBEL users. Very important to have it public. Okay, you save. And on the license, you will be able to pick up, I go back to the Internet Explorer license, you will be able to pick up this report, going to all licenses, taking this one, and I will say, oh, I have a CBEL server or CBEL advanced users, whatever license. And this license will, in the use rights and rules, use the report, which is called CBEL. And this will be a permanent allocation. So every user will consume. And then we make a big step forward, which has been asked by customers for years sometimes. It is, we want licenses that can reflect something that can't be found on the computer or that cannot be found on a server or on an inside application. The idea that AD group can drive license consumption because Active Directory has information which may not be reflected, such as a list of authorized users for a level of access into an end user application. So that the other change that comes with this automated allocation and exemption, and actually it's already coming. It's already in the version actually it's a new version, this one, but the version that gets released in September will have it. So keep in mind, this is now possible to create a report on AD groups, and by filtering the users based on AD groups, you can then reuse that as an automated allocation. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show for today. Let me move back to the PowerPoint. So your questions will be addressed on the next call. So hopefully you had time to ask, or maybe everything was clear. So I will thank you for attending this call and talk to you very soon. Hope to see you on the next session. Thank you very much. Bye.